large garage-type building was found today filled to the top with decomposing human remains. Authorities have found 5 more vaults in other buildings and other vaults in the woods. So far, 92 sets of remains have been recovered, only 16 of which have been identified.
What's up, Damnation? Steven the Damn Guide here. For this week's video, we will be looking into the story of the Tri-State Crematorium. Now, if you guys don't know the story about it, you're about to. So you guys just sit back, relax, and let's see what happened in this story that swept the nation in 2002. The Tri-State Crematorium was founded in the mid-1970s by a man named Tommy Marsh. It started up as a cremation service for the smaller funeral homes in the area that were unable to offer cremation services themselves. It's located in the small town of Noble, Georgia. It serviced funeral homes in Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama, and was respected throughout the community as the type of place where you would want to send your loved ones.
They were highly thought of. They were active in the community. They were active in the civic affairs.
As Tommy Marsh got on in his years, the business was taken over by his son, Roy Brent Marsh. Roy took over in 1996, and as far as everyone else knew, continued the family name. That was until the year 2000, when a propane delivery driver reported to the local authorities that he believed he saw human remains laying around at the property.
Brent Marsh, nice guy, great family. It was very unexpected.
Of course, the local police officers figured that this was more of a regulations kind of issue than a criminal matter, so they didn't look into it. That was until 2002, when federal inspectors were informed about the horrible happenings going on at Tri-State Crematorium.
And we're here executing a search warrant at the premises to recover business records related to the operation of the crematorium, and also to examine a coffin which is on the ground.
In November of 2001, they finally get a report to the local sheriff's department stating that there are human remains scattered in the woods surrounding this crematorium service. Once again, the sheriff's department comes out and reportedly they find nothing. But it wasn't long until federal investigators would finally get word of this and would come in. It was finally on February 15th, 2002, that a real proper investigation was brought in on this place.
As we were uncovering and opening a sealed concrete vault, we discovered one concrete vault stuffed or packed with more human remains.
The moment that it did, they had no idea what kind of can of worms they were going to be opening. The news reports hit like a wildfire, spreading not only throughout the local area, but it made national news and was running national news for several months in a row. That is because on this location, they started finding human remains, some sitting there as long as 10 years, scattered throughout the entire property.
We have found some mummified bodies that I would easily say are between 10 and 20 years old, as far as having been buried and then taken that long to get to this particular point.
They found children's graves They found children's remains as well, some as young as just a couple months old.
We have found one definite set of infant remains, though, and there are also some other areas that we are examining right now that appear to have at least one small casket that would be an infant type that has fallen apart.
The investigation took a strong turn, bringing in hundreds of federal investigators, as well as a mobile morgue from up north to help categorize and search through all of these bodies. Many weren't even dressed, wearing nothing but hospital gowns or simply wrapped up in sheets. They were stacked on top of one another inside of burial vaults, piled 6 foot tall in one of the sheds, and a body was even found half stuffed inside of one of the cremation machines, left there to decay.
We have recovered and tagged 149 different sets of remains, of which there are, again, as of noon, we have 29 confirmed identifications.
After all the news was said and done, and they thoroughly inspected the entire property, including draining out an entire lake on the property to search for human remains, the final death count was out. 334 bodies were found littering this property. Of those 334, a little over 220 were able to be identified. The rest were not, because some were nothing more than skeletal remains, others were mummified. They had people of all ages, mostly the elderly, but also children, infants. It was a terrible, terrible incident.
There is no logical explanation for having vaults filled with human remains and for having caskets dumped, in the dirt and decaying and falling apart with more piled on top and more piled on top.
Now you may ask, how was it that they were able to get away with doing this for over 10 years without being inspected? Well, that's because a loophole in Georgia law. While normally running a funeral home and a cremation department together, you would have to have some sort of a permit. Since he only dealt directly with funeral homes and never offered funeral himself, the loophole allowed him to not require any type of registration or permitting, meaning that his entire facility was never once inspected. Of course, those loopholes have been completely filled right now, but that was just one of a handful of things that led to what many believe is the most abhorrent and terrible thing to ever happen in this century in the funeral business. Ray Brent March was arrested on over 300 criminal violations. He was ultimately charged by the state of Georgia with 787 counts, including theft by deception, abusing a corpse, burial service related fraud, and giving false statements. The maximum sentence for all of these would have carried over 1,000 years worth of jail time. However, the defense was really good at what they did, sadly, and they found quite a few loopholes. For one, they were able to write off most of the charges of theft due to the fact that, according to the state of Georgia, a human body has no value. It has no monetary value because you cannot price a human, you cannot price human remains. So due to this, he was able to get off on all of those charges of theft and only facing the smaller charges such as fraud and lying to the police, stuff of that nature. Instead of serving 1,000 years during the second court session, he finally pleaded for a charge of 12 years.
The 12-year sentence comes after Marsh pled guilty to 787 counts of abuse of a corpse, theft, fraud, and making false statements, nearly 3 years after investigators found the remains of 334 uncremated bodies. Family members of the victim say they'll never forgive Marsh.
telling you right now is that I'm apologizing. I can't give you the answers that you want.
Drag these human remains throughout the property, leave them, shove them, and stack them to the point where he was literally forcing them into burial vaults, stacking them inside of a shed. Was it easier than properly cremating them? You may ask, how did people go so long without knowing what was going on? How did people not tell whenever they got the cremation vase back? That is because he would actually fill them with cement dust, which looks very similar to ashes, especially since he would put the cement dust inside of the cremation bags and tag them, making it almost discernible from real ashes. Why did he do this? Why would he go through all this trouble? Why wouldn't he just properly cremate them? Why wouldn't he just do his job? Sadly, the families never did get that answer. Throughout this trial, Roy's father, the one who founded it, sadly passed away. And they brought on beliefs that Roy himself had mercury poisoning from cremation of people with certain dental implants due to the fact that the building wasn't properly ventilated, since it never had to pass any inspections and never had to be up to any code. So they tried to pull a plea saying that it was because of mercury poisoning. However, not many people buy that. Sadly, we may never know. He served out his 12-year sentence and was released in June of 2016. Since then, he has dropped off the radar, and nobody is truly sure where he has gone. The one thing that they do know is that they never got answers. However, there is still so much more to this story to be uncovered. Due to this incident, many different types of regulations and laws were passed, not only in the state of Georgia, but nationwide. It required anyone that performs any type of cremation service to have license and be properly inspected. It fixed all of these loopholes that let this terrible incident happen. Eventually, the families filed a class action lawsuit against the Tri-State Crematorium and were able to get settlements of over $3 million. But for many, that wasn't enough. They would not be able to get any signs of respect or any type of deliverance from the fact that their family members were put through what many said was the most abhorrent thing that they had ever witnessed. Now, something this big, of course, would have a pretty big impact not only on the nation but also in the media. There are a couple different TV episodes that are based off of this, as well as a movie. Those 2 episodes on the TV were Law & Order Criminal Intents, Season 2, Episode 1, called Dead. It also inspired CSI Miami's Season 1, Episode 14 show, Forced Entry. And finally, there was a movie put out in 2011 called Sakanaga that was a producer's rendering of this terrible incident. Due to the fact that otherwise it is pretty much unheard of today, I personally, the moment I heard it, I knew that I had to learn more about this situation because I'd never heard of it before. Now we are going to take it one step further. We are going to go to the property of the Tri-State Crematorium, through the woods where the bodies were scattered, and see what has changed in over 20 or in almost 20 years. Sadly, we're going to have to be going during the daytime due to the agreement I have to explore the property, and we will not be performing any type of an investigation. However, this will be the first time in so many years that it has been showed on camera. So let's go and see what is left of the property of the Tri-State Crematorium. It was right here at this exact point that on February 15th, 2002, EPA federal agents rolled in to the Tri-State Community Crematorium. To the Tri-State Crematorium. This is the original driveway to get to the crematorium, which has now been completely cleared out. But it was on this property behind me where they found all of the human remains that were scattered throughout the woods and throughout sheds, even stacked on top of one another. Luckily, thanks to the Walker County Tax Commission, I was actually able to get permission to go onto this property. Almost 20 years since federal agents rolled in. We are going to see what it looks like now. I am currently standing at the exact spot that the Tri-State Crematorium used to be. This clearing is now all that remains of the location of the crematorium, which was torn down soon after the investigation was finalized. However, there are still some small bits of buildings on property that once upon a time held bodies. Even though it's daytime, I'm still getting a very eerie feeling, not only of this place, but the woods surrounding this location. I can't help but feel like I'm being watched from, I don't know, watched from somewhere. Seems like this trailer has just been left here to decay. It has been nearly 20 years since anyone has really been out through here, but federal agents scooped through this entire forest trying to find any sign of remains. We're now going into the forest to see if we can find the infamous lake, or I guess the better term will be lake bed, because they drained an entire lake inside of this forest searching for bodies, though none were ever found inside of the water. We have finally come up on the riverbed. This dry area of land, which you can see is actually cracked and lifted in many spots, was once upon a time a large lake that spanned this entire reach here. Now, all that remains of this once large lake is this. A small creek trickling through these plains. Whenever the federal government came in, they completely cleared out this entire lake and drained it. So what was once a natural pond here is now just this flowing water, dug by hand. Where we are standing now, I would have been underwater. Climbing through the forest, I was able to actually find this. This pile of metal and ruins is all that's left of one of the large sheds that used to sit on this property. It was in this shed that over 7 bodies were found, stacked on top of one another. Coffins were resting right outside of it. 20 years later, we've come back to see what nature has done. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this week's video. To bring an end to this video, we are at the monument that was funded by the federal government in remembrance of those whose bodies were recovered at the Tri-State Crematorium. Make sure to like and subscribe. Comment below what you like the most about this video. If you have any other ideas for future videos, make sure to check in the description below to see our new Discord see some behind the scenes action and get access to videos before almost anyone else. Make sure to check out our new merchandise line so that you can get yourself some proper Damnation merch. Make sure to keep the families of those whose bodies were found almost 20 years ago in your mind. From your friend, TheDamGuide, I wish you all a happy morning, afternoon, evening, or night. See you guys next time. Have a wonderful day. Bye.